Hello and welcome to another video in the series of Roman noble families. Today we are discussing about Licinii Crassi. That's very interesting plebeian family, especially interesting for their versatility and kind of less strict family culture and enforcement than what we see in many other families, and also kind of individual family culture in different family lines of the family, which is also quite interesting one. Some basic information about the family first. Our agenda, of course, first. What we are covering today is that I will start by covering overview on the family of the Licinii Crassi, and also discuss shortly about different consular branches of the Licinii family in general. And then we will dive deep into family connections of the Licinii Crassi, and that's a subject that it's quite lengthy one because we know actually quite a lot about this family and their connections. And in that way, it's also one of the most important family of the Republican era for the historians in general, because we can learn a lot about Roman history and how Roman families and how they worked when we examine more closely Licinii Crassi. Then there are a couple of cases which I also will present here. One of them is about close cooperation between Mucii Scaevolae and Licinii Crassi, which is a very interesting example of how deep connections between Roman families could be, and how influential those connections could be. Then I will also discuss a couple of cases involving the daughters of the Licinii family, and this is a very good family for that, because we actually know quite a lot about the daughters of this family, which is almost, I should say, at the exceptionally large amount what we know about them compared to many other families. I will discuss about Licinia, who wasn't allowed to mourn for her husband's death. Kind of tragic story there. And also, as a last case, I will present 6 women. 2 of them were Laelia, 2 of them Mucii, and 2 of them were Licinia. And we will see how generations of women can also be as interesting subject for research as the generations of men. So there's a lot to cover here in this family, and it gives us a lot of information about different topics regarding the Roman culture. Licinii Crassi overview, plebeian gens, obviously. Consular level from 205 before Christ, and making it pretty recent, but still firmly in the Republican era. There are some discussion that maybe Licinii overall were originating from Etruria, that they were of Etruscan origin. This is contested because actually we have found quite a lot of archaeological evidence from everywhere about Licinii, and it's quite impossible to rate those into any kind of order of precedence, or that where the family originally came from. There is some linguistical evidence here that Etruscan word legne, meaning upturned, might be the root for the word Licinius, but obviously this is also not confirmed or overall the only possible explanation. So there are some hints. I think personally, pointing more to the Etruscan origin, but well, we can always disagree or agree with that more or less. Licinii Crassi was a large family by all accounts, and it had many branches. And for example, today we will not be able to discuss about every individual of the family at any great length because of this. And it's, I think, characterized by the low family cohesion, meaning that the family culture was very adaptive and allowed different sorts of family strategies to be employed in different branches of the family as well. This is the overview of the family, and as you can see here, we know quite many individuals. I think, if I remember correctly, there are 40 or 50 individuals that we know by name of this family. So there is lots of to know, and also, as you can observe here, overall we know quite many of the daughters of the family, and there are still, for example, some who don't even feature in this chart, but we know that they have existed. But let's go and have a look for the Licinii branches of consular level in more general case. And the Licinii had 5 consular level branches, and this is quite a lot. And for example, Cornelii had also so many of them: Cornelii Scipiones, Cornelii Lentuli, Cornelii Sulle, and so on. And here what we know about these branches is that perhaps they are related somehow to each other. And I think at least this was also believed to be the case in the ancient writers believed that they were related. The exact nature of these relations we only know about Licinii Varii and Licinii Crassi, that were directly related to each other. But considering that all of these other branches sprang up as well during these same years, this same time, I think it's very possible that they are related somehow with Licinii Crassi or Licinii Varii. And there have been some guesses and reconstructions made to this effect, but I have not included those guesses here. I'm just focusing in Licinii Crassi this time. And if you look here at the beginning of the family line, or family lines, better to say in that way, we can see that there is beginning here in the 200s with a couple of consuls appearing there. And first consul of the Licinii overall was Licinius Varus, consul of 236, whose brother has a son who became first consul of Licinii Crassi. That was Publius Licinius Crassus Dives in 205. So first Licinius Crassus is this brother of this consul of 236, and this is why we know that Licinii Varii, of whom we know only a couple of existed, were related to Licinii Crassi. And let's discuss more about consul of 205, Licinius Crassus Dives. And he was also not only as first consul, but also first of the Licinii Crassi to have a nickname of Dives. And this is quite important detail as well. He was consul together with Scipio Africanus. He also reached censorship, and in the overall Roman history, he is the third plebeian to reach the office of Pontifex Maximus. And at this time of Roman history, Pontifex Maximus was selected and not elected by popular vote. So this also further testifies the importance of his career and how important figure he was in the Roman state. Furthermore, what we know about him as a personality is that he was very affluent, and he was likable person, and he was well educated in law and religion. And actually these traits seem to pop up quite often when we are talking about the Licinii Crassi. They usually are mentioned to be quite rich, and they also are mentioned to be kind of easygoing and soft and likable persons. And as well as we have a lot of evidence to suggest that this family paid a lot of attention to education of its members, of its sons and daughters both. And law and religion are very much present in the life of later Licinii Crassi as well. So I think this consul of 205 really kind of sets the tone for the whole big family lines coming after him. His son didn't reach into any important position in his career, and we don't know any reason for this. Certainly it was not because his father would have lacked importance, as highlighted. And also the family had connections, for example, with Cornelis Scipiones, whose support surely would have raised anybody they wanted to be as consul, and even into higher places. But we don't know the reason. And this is actually kind of recurring trait in the Licinii Crassi family, that there are very seldom pairs of fathers and sons who would follow each other as consuls. So the family had a lot of consuls, but usually the offspring of the consuls didn't rise into consulships themselves. And it's a good question why this wasn't, maybe it wasn't necessary, maybe they were rich enough and they didn't need those consulships, or I don't know. This makes this family quite interesting, because many other families really put a lot of effort to have every generation to reach consulship, but Licinii Crassi obviously didn't do that, and there probably has been some reason, but we don't know what it is. Next we will look at the first of these three important family lines, and here we have the origin of this family line is in the consul of 168. They all begin, these first two family branches begin from the brother of the consul of 205, and this brother Gaius Licinius Crassus had two of his sons to reach consulship, that is 171 and 168, and this first branch is the younger son, consul of 168. And overall in this branch there is one person who is very notable and very well known, and that is the consul of 95, Lucius Licinius Crassus Orator. And this Orator is not his official nickname. It's something that has been given by later generations, but it's often used to identify him, and for a reason as well, because he was celebrated as one of the most skilled of Roman speakers and lawyers. And for example, we know him very well from the works of Cicero, and Cicero was personally his protege as a youngster. So Cicero learned a lot from this consul of 95, Licinius Crassus. This consul of 95 also reached censorship, and that was together with Domitius Ahenobarbus, whom I have told earlier about, and in this video series. And when we look more deeply into the career of the consul of 95, we will come with this family of Ahenobarbi, but also the family of Mucii Scaevolae. And next I will present this case of the Licinii Crassi and Mucii Scaevolae cooperation, because here we can see the importance of the consul of 95 as well. This is the overall view of the people we are going to talk about next, and I made this simplified version to give you some idea about the depth and wideness of these relations between Mucii Scaevolae and Licinii Crassi. And Crassus Orator was serving in Gallia with Domitius Ahenobarbus Younger, that was the consul of 96, under father of this consul of 96, Ahenobarbus Elder, who was consul in 122, and of this Ahenobarbus I've already talked about in the last video. And Crassus Orator also took part, was one of the men ordered to establish the city of Narbo there. And this already gives you an idea how deeply involved and how connected this Crassus Orator was with other noble families of this time. And for example, we have a classic continuum of consulships of different families here. At year 97, the consul was Licinius Crassus from the other branch of the Licinii Crassi. At year 96, it was Ahenobarbus's turn, and 95, it was Crassus Orator with Mucius Scaevola, and at 94, it was again Ahenobarbus, who was the younger brother of the consul of 96, Ahenobarbus. So, and why this kind of arrangement of consulships for several years? The Roman law said that you couldn't yourself be consul again until there had been a number of years before your first consulship. So you couldn't keep continuing year after year as being consul. There are a couple of exceptions in Roman history of this, but otherwise the rule was very rigidly followed. And what is better than having yourself having the consulship every year is obviously having your close allies following you as consul, because that consolidates the decisions what you have made, and also gives your influence to their decisions as well. Obviously, because if you make agreement that okay, I will be consul this year and I will support your claim to be consul next year, then there is already kind of a pact made that influences the consulships of the both parties. And when it's done with these multiple family lines and multiple families, then you have this kind of small circle of families agreeing with each other that who is going to have the consulship this year and who is going to have it next year and year after and so on. And of course this also involves the element of democracy and the popular vote. But if the plan is well made, then actually these families can pretty much dominate the consulships as they want. So it's a very interesting mixture of this kind of democracy and aristocratic rule of the families. Crassus Orator, he was married with Mucia, and this probably is not anyhow surprising. And this Mucia was daughter of the consul of 117, Quintus Mucius Scaevola Augur. And the Scaevola Augur was also in charge of the education of Crassus Orator, and with his cousin, consul of 133, Mucius Scaevola Pontifex. So these two, Mucii Scaevolae, both in the religious focus of the family, and both consuls were kind of godfathers or trainers of teachers of young Crassus Orator. And Scaevola Pontifex, if you look at that person of consul of 133, he was a son of the consul of 175, Mucius Scaevola, and his mother was Licinia. And this Licinia was the sister of consul of 168, Licinius Crassus. So this kind of deep family connection that goes all the way back to the originator of this branch of the family, and is still deeply involved and influencing the family member of this branch of Licini, the Crassus Orator, several generations later. That's a very good example of how deep and long-lasting these connections were. They were not made out of the necessity of daily politics and strives. They clearly were planned to be multi-generational and lasting decades, even if not hundreds of years. And when we see more here in this graph, the colleague of Crassus Orator during his consulship at 95 was Quintus Mucius Scaevola, and this Scaevola was married with Licinia. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly whose daughter this Licinia was, but I think it's fairly obvious that it she must have been a Licinii Crassa, and that's very, very probable, considering that his colleague Crassus Orator was married with Mucia. And when he checked the brother of the grandfather of the consul of 95, Mucius Scaevolae, he was adopted into the family of Publius Licinius Crassus Dives, the important first Crassus Dives. And when we look at overall view here, there are 6 consuls from the Mucii Scaevolae and 5 consuls from Licinii Crassi, all closely tied together, both in politics and in religion, as well as through marriages, well over 120 years' time and 4 generations. And I think this is one of the aspects that is the most difficult for a modern person to grasp in the ancient Roman culture, that how deep these family connections were and how much they brought to the lives of the Romans. One simply wasn't kind of isolated individual in the big world, but one was very much tied into the family traditions and family alliances, and one had to respect these, because it's not easy to betray, for example, this kind of connection that has lasted for 4 generations. It just doesn't happen, because it's the world you have been born into and you have been raised into and you have been lived your whole life in that. So it's a very influential thing and very central for the experience of the contemporaries Romans and how they view the world and saw themselves as part of the society. And also we must remember that this kind of 4-generation continuum would have not lasted unless it would have been beneficial for both of the families. Both Mucii Scaevolae and both Licinii Crassi benefited greatly from this kind of cooperation and coordination of families and family strategies. Then if we go back into this first branch of the Licinii Crassi, we will also note here, for example, the Gaius Licinius Crassus, who was tribunus plebis in 145, and he was noted for his political decision that during his time, before his time, it had been customary that tribuni would have been addressing the Senate and have their back turned to the people standing in the forum. But this Licinius Crassus made that change, that he turned himself and faced the greater populace, the normal people, and turned his back to the senators when he was speaking in the forum. And this was considered even as scandalous in its time, because it was so clearly a statement that which one is more important, the people or the Senate of Rome. And well, his career didn't extend further than that, and perhaps that was the reason also behind that. But here we can see also that there was individual thought in the Licinii Crassi family as well. But when we continue down the family line from the consul of 95, Crassus Orator, we can notice that his daughters married very highly. Elder daughter, Licinia Crassa Prima, as she is often called, married with consul of 111, that was Publius Cornelius Scipio Nasica Serapio, and they also eventually adopted the son of Crassus the Orator as well, after Crassus had died. And their own son was known as the last of the Scipiones Nasicae, consul of 52, and who we know as a name of Quintus Caecilius Metellus Pius Scipio Nasica, because he was adopted by the Caecili Metelli, and terms of this adoption said that he has to use this name of Caecili Metelli from then on, but he was Scipio Nasica by birth. And daughter of this last Scipio Nasica was married with Publius Licinius Crassus, who was the son of the triumvir Crassus from the other branch of the Licinii Crassi. So there was this kind of deep connection also with Cornelis Scipiones here, or if we want to say Caecili Metelli. And in fact, this combination of three families of Cornelii Scipiones and Licinii Crassi and Caecili Metelli, it's very much a collection of few of the most important families of the Rome. Younger of the daughters of Consul 95 Crassus married the son of Gaius Marius, and who became consul in 82. And this is perhaps a bit surprising choice, considering that the elder daughter, Licinia Crassa Prima, married with Cornelis Scipiones, whom were very much the traditional Patrician gens, against son of Gaius Marius, who really was the champion of the plebs. So it's very much different type of alliance than with Scipiones. But I don't know, maybe this tells also about the powerful position of the Licinii Crassi family overall. They were free to choose with whom they align with. Or maybe it was also kind of investment for the future, that in case there would be more popular movement, they would support it. And as we know, the Licinii Crassi themselves really weren't that deeply involved in the high senatorial position in politics. They were much more versatile and much more, I would say, realistic about politics in a way that they wanted to include the different cities of Italy more tightly into the ruling of the Roman Empire. It had become became a Mediterranean empire at this moment, and also allowing more equal policies between ruling and class and the people. So I think Licinii Crassi were kind of moderates in this political setting, although they were mostly aligned with the senatorial side of policies. Licinius Crassus Orator was, in his last years of life, very much involved in trying to mitigate the tensions between the Italian cities and Rome. And for example, he supported the policies of younger Livius Drusus, and who wanted to grant citizenship and influence more widely to the Italian cities and elites of the Italian cities. But unfortunately, Crassus the Orator died in year 91, and actually his death was perhaps one of the most important triggering events behind the outbreak of the social war later, because his important backing and support in the Senate for younger Drusus meant that when Crassus died, the laws of Drusus didn't really have any realistic chance to go through to the Senate, and this was kind of the last straw for the Italian cities who decided that nothing else than violence would then help anymore. So very much dramatic and unfortunate exit from the stage for this Crassus Orator. Then we can look at the second family line here, that is from the older brother, Consul of 171, compared to this younger brother, Consul of 168, who was the originator of the first family line. And in this family line you will see most of the consuls of Licinii Crassi, really. And this family branch, in that sense, can be considered to be the most successful one of the Licinii Crassi, because of the number of consuls. But it's a quite different one in terms of family culture compared to the first family line we go through earlier. We don't know much about the life and career of Consul 171. What we do know is that he was given the command in province of Hispania Citerior when he was praetor, but actually he didn't ever go to that province. And why he didn't go? Well, he said that it was because of religious reasons that prevented him leaving the area of the city of Rome. Well, I think it's safe to say that this was an excuse. Certainly, religious reasons didn't prevent other important priests and religious officials to leave Rome. But it was a convenient excuse. Probably he simply wanted to stay in Rome, where all the political action was, and also which was much easier and nicer life than living in some godforsaken part of Hispania, where there weren't any comfortable things of life and constant danger of warfare. But we don't know exactly why he didn't want to go there, but that's quite probable reason for the excuse. This refusal of going into the promise didn't hurt his career much, because he also reached censorship later on. So he was also well placed and influential figure there. What's interesting is that daughter of this consul of 171 married with very low-born plebeian Claudius Asellius, and this is the plebeian branch of the Claudii, so it's not patrician like Claudii Pulchri, for example. And the consul of 179, the son of the consul of 171, was known with nickname of Agelastus, and that means smileless. And it is said that he was known to have smiled only once in his life. Well, that's quite probably a story, but in any case, it tells something about this character, and I think the contemporaries wouldn't have given this kind of nickname to him unless there was some truth in it. And maybe this is some kind of signal that the family life of Consul of 171 wasn't doing too well for some reason. And as usual, the son of smileless Licinius Crassus reached consulship at 97, and he also rise to become a censor at 89. So evidently the Licinii Crassi here in this branch didn't lack influence and possibilities to rise into power. And he also had a triumph for his battles in Lusitania, again connection to Hispaniac region, and maybe that's kind of a family tradition for this branch of Licinii Crassi as well. What's interesting is that it was said that the house of the consul of 97 was a small one. And this has been taken as a sign that the family was poor. And if you remember that marriage with that plebeian Claudius, which is quite a mystery for us, and combine it with this rumor of having a family that was poor, then I think that's a logical connection, and it might make sense. But also we have to be quite critical here to the these kind of notions of family being poor, because how the Roman taxation worked was that the senator class people paid taxes, property taxes, based on the number of roof tiles in their buildings. So the roof tiles were really counted, and because this gave quite a good idea about the size of the building and the property, so they didn't need to measure it inside the house, they just counted the roof tiles. And if you think how you could optimize your taxes in this kind of system, obviously you would choose to live in a smaller house and instead of building a grand house. And this might have been the kind of Roman way to tell that the house was too small for the man of his status, instead that the house was small compared to normal houses, for example. But it was small for his wealth, for example. And this for the Romans would have meant that he was stingy. And Roman culture didn't really appreciate that. For Romans, it was kind of taken for granted that if you had wealth, it was your duty to share it to others and use it. And hoarding money just for the sake of owning much money was very much against the Roman idea of virtuous living and proper way to manage your affairs. So rich people were expected to use that money that they had. And so if they lived in a house, for example, that was considered too small, that could have earned them this kind of reputation of being stingy and looking after money too much. So there are many possibilities how we can interpret these ancient rumors that have survived to us, and we need to take quite a critical look at them at some times. But what is interesting is that there was a marriage with low family of Venulejus, and this actually might give us indication that that family was poor, that they couldn't afford to marry anyone higher. But then again, if we consider the life of Consul of 97, the marriage was not broken, for example, when he reached censorship, and surely had reached wealth enough to reach a high political position. So, because it would have made more sense that you first marry as a young person with someone from the low status, and when your own family wealth and position increases, then we will divorce and marry someone who is from the higher status to elevate the status, overall status of your family. But he didn't do that. And of course, there is always the possibility that marriage was actually a happy one. And he wanted to keep this Venuleia as his wife. What's also interesting here in this case is that this is the first of only two known cases where inside Licinii Crassi, where two consecutive generations of consuls were in the family, because the son of the consul of 97 also reached consulship. So this is kind of quite interesting and exceptional person in many ways, this consul of 97. What we know about his political agenda was that he was an ambitious statesman, and he had a true social agenda with him. Because he advanced legislation to ban luxury products, and also he fought against the superstitions that were spreading into Rome with growing contacts with other parts of the Mediterranean world. And this leads, I think, into conclusion that perhaps he was a true traditionalist. He wanted to extol the traditional Roman virtues and this kind of idealized simple Roman life, which also might explain his small house, for example, and his staying with a wife that he had married at first. In any case, he didn't want to have anything to do with the strife between Marius and Sulla, and it is quite possible that if he was a traditionalist, he found both of those sides quite distasteful and going against his values. We don't know the exact reason, but he died in the year of 87. He was either killed or he committed a suicide, we don't know. But this coincided when Marius marched back to Rome. And two of his sons also died in the civil war. So there is a slight chance that he might have eventually chosen a side of Sulla against Marius, or then maybe Marius or some supporter of Marius had some earlier disagreements of or beefs with this Licinius Crassus. We don't know for sure, but what we do know is this, that his death happening at the same time when Marius returned to home probably was important fact here. This Council of 97 was a censor together with Lucius Julius Caesar, and this Caesar was known to be his friend and ally. So maybe there is also some hint in the political side. And as he had spent a triumph, I think it's quite certain that even if his family had been poor, which is not certain, when his life was beginning and career was beginning, after the triumph, his family would have not been poor anymore. That's for sure. And we also know that he left a sizable inheritance to his only surviving son. And this is also important because this means that when he died, with Marius arriving, the Marius and Cinna didn't confiscate his family fortune at that moment. And of course, this surviving son of the Consul 97 is perhaps the most widely known of all of Licinii Crassi. That is Marcus Licinius Crassus Triumvir. And this Triumvir Crassus we very often see to be called with nickname of Dives, but it was not his real nickname. That also has been given by modern people and modern commentators. The Dives nickname belongs into other branch of the Licinii Crassi, not to this branch. But it's factually correct. He was Dives, that is rich, and he is often cited to have been the richest man in Rome of his time. And this Crassus Triumvir is a controversial figure in many ways. And it seems that what we know about him was that he possessed both a lot of positive and a lot of negative traits. And there has been quite a lot of attempts to interpret the career of Crassus Triumvir as somehow in relation or under the influence of the careers of Caesar and Pompeius, but that's very difficult position to take and an interpretation to take, I think, because Crassus Triumvir was older than those, and actually it was more like that he was protecting, for example, career of Julius Caesar in the beginning. So I think the popular ideas about Crassus Triumvir are quite upside down views of his real personality and influence. Crassus Triumvir clearly had inherited both means and skills to rise into prominence. And as said, this is the first time in the history of Licinii Crassi when son followed his father to be consul. But also Triumvir Crassus is generally known for his greed for money. And even though he was wealthy to begin with, he became astronomically rich when the Sulla returned to Rome and had his proscriptions. And what Crassus Triumvir did was that he was buying these properties, especially properties of killed Marians and political enemies of Sulla at ridiculously low prices, and thus gathering a very sizable amount of and collection of properties from Rome. And this kind of greed, of course, was already in his own time looked upon at very negative light. But what is not mentioned, I think, often enough, was that he was also known for his frugal lifestyle. So he really hoarded those possessions and money, but he lived a very simple lifestyle. One could even say that in a stoic lifestyle. He did not use his wealth for excesses, and if you compare his lifestyle, for example, into very luxurious lifestyles of Sulla or for example Licinius Lucullus and so on, he was very different character from that, and he was much more in line with his father and grandfather, who had been known for their frugal lifestyle and principles of traditionalism. And instead of using his wealth for luxuries, Crassus Triumvir financed political careers of others. And as I mentioned, for example, this when Gaius Julius Caesar campaigned to become a Pontifex Maximus, this very expensive campaign was financed by Crassus. Caesar himself couldn't have paid enough for it. What's also interesting is the family life of Crassus Triumvir. He married the wife of his late brother, that is Tertulla. And yes, Tertulla is also a low family of low status. And we have no idea why he followed the example of his father by selecting a wife that was so much below of his own social status, and also as his father, he didn't later remarried to someone from the high noble families. Certainly he could have chosen quite literally anybody from the high Roman society. Interestingly enough, even if his father and he himself had settled for these low status families in marriages, both of his sons married into the highest elite of Rome, into Caecili Metelli and Cornelis Scipione's families. Practically you couldn't get any higher than that. So had something changed in the family culture, or was it simply that the times were different, or we don't know. But certainly this is an interesting anomaly in the line of family. And if we take a closer look into these marriages of the sons of Crassus Triumvir, younger of them married with Cornelia Metella. And this was very important family marriage because it united the family branches inside the Licinii Crassi, as mentioned before. And what's interesting also is that the consul of 80, that is Quintus Caecilius Metellus Pius, who adopted the last Scipio Nasica, he was also married with Licinia. And we don't know whose daughter this Licinia was, but Quintus Caecilius Metellus Pius was one of the closest allies of dictator Sulla. So there probably was some connection into Sullan arrangements as well here, because I think it's to be expected that Sulla would have had some kind of influence here. Elder son of the Crassus Triumvir married Caecilia Metella, and this Caecilia Metella was the daughter of consul of 69, Quintus Caecilius Metellus Creticus. And this is, I think, quite interesting because if you take overall view here, it's a contact building between Licinii Crassi and different branches of Caecili Metelli, both of being the highest plebeian nobility. And I think it was not a coincidence. It was political design with some purpose behind it. When Crassus the Triumvir died in his attack against Parthia, his death also shattered the union between Caesar and Pompeius, and within a few years' time the Republic was destroyed in the civil war. And I think this is actually one of the more crucial reasons why Caesar and Pompeius fall out eventually, because Crassus wasn't there anymore to regulate between them and to balance their struggle for power. I think that the triumvirate actually was quite stable arrangement in itself compared to having two opposing figures like Caesar and Pompeius. This Parthian war has been very often dubbed as a way for Licinius Crassus to copy the success of Caesar and Pompeius, who were known as war heroes. And I find this a bit difficult idea really to accept, because Licinii Crassi were important and prominent enough that they didn't have any need to do a thing like that. And also Licinius Crassus Triumvir, with all his wealth and influence already in the society, I don't think that it really was necessary, and he did it out of the willingness to copy or wanting to emulate Caesar and Pompeius. I think it's pretty much the other way around, that Caesar and Pompeius were forced to select this kind of military glory for themselves because they couldn't match the prestige and position of Crassus Triumvir otherwise. I think we should look at these basically from very different angle than what is usually being done when considering the relationship between Crassus and Caesar and Pompeius. What is interesting is that the story of this family branch did not die with the Republic. The Licinii Crassi and this branch survived even after the Republic had fallen. And instead what we see there in this branch is that the second father-son pair of consuls in the family at the late time of year 30 and 14 BC. And the father here in this second pair, Marcus Crassus, was at first fighting in the side of Antonius, but he switched sides to Octavianus, and as a thank you for this, Octavianus gave him the consulship of the year 30, even while the Crassus hadn't even been a praetor first. So it was quite obviously fast-tracked promotion for Crassus. And this Crassus served in Macedonia and Dacia as a commander under Octavianus, and he earned a triumph for his victories there. And what makes him as an important figure in Roman history really is that he's the last triumphator of his whole family of all Licinii Crassi, and also he is the last triumphator in the history of Rome, in the way that we understand that triumphator concept. Because after his triumph, it was decreed that the triumphs are the privilege of the imperial family only, so no one outside the imperial family could celebrate the triumph. And Marcus Crassus, the consul of year 30, was the last one to celebrate freely a real triumph. And also this is very telling about the importance of the triumphs for the Romans, because Augustus or Octavianus wouldn't have monopolized the triumphs for the imperial family unless they would have been so politically important currency that they couldn't have been given to anyone outside the imperial family. The son of the consul 30 also became consul at year 14, and actually was married with Pompeia, who was granddaughter of Pompeius Magnus. So in this way, the high republican families continued their lives under the empire as well, but obviously with much less influence and power to have in their hands. And if we compare this second branch of the Licinii Crassi with the first branch in terms of family culture and how alliances were built, it's a very different kind of family. Even we could say that they are from two different families. They are so distant from each other in the family culture. And in many families, this would have not been possible. The family culture would have been more unified throughout the branches. But I think this kind of allowing diversity of family cultures is a hallmark of the Licinii Crassi overall. They were kind of somehow more relaxed on this than many other families. And as example of proof of this concept that it's about being more tolerant and allowing diversity is that these branches had some coordination between them. So even if they were dissimilar in their family strategies, they still would not be competing against each other, but instead cooperated and also even united the family lines through marriages. So I think we can see this as a kind of proof that the family culture really was this kind of flexible. Then next, before we move into the third main family line, we will have a look at this very interesting continuum that presents these interfamily connections between Licinii Crassi and Mucii Scaevolae and Pompei Magni and even Calpurni Pisones in a bit different way than previously. And I think this is very interesting continuum what we have here. And also a unique glimpse into the reality of living in the Roman life, family and Roman life, how the generations follow each other and how the generations are cooperating with same families over and over again. And it's how many-sided these relationships between the families can be. And for example, here we have 8 generations of family relations, and it spans over 200 years in time. And if this would have been, for example, from some small country village, I think it wouldn't be surprising because obviously everybody would know each other and there would be only so many options to have for marriages. But keep in mind that all of these families here are the most richest and influential ones in Rome. So they really had a freedom of choice. They could have chosen anyone at any point during these couple of hundred years to align themselves with and marry with. But they chose to keep these family connections for generations and generations. I mean, 8 generations of family connections is a huge achievement and success. And it's no coincidence. It's a multi-generational family planning. This means that sons and daughters of the family were kind of assigned their spouses, coming spouses at quite early age, and also the marriages were to be sealed at quite young age to make sure that the unions happen. So it's a very interesting and very different kind of life than what we are used to in the modern times. And this is something I think is overlooked very often when we try to find motivations and when we try to understand the individual actions of Romans, because we are looking only the individual and their lives. We are not looking the family tree and the family connections and importance of this kind of long-lasting unions between families. But let's look at the third family line of the Licinii Crassi next. And this one is a bit smaller than the 2 previous ones. And these are actually the offspring of Licinius Crassus Dives. So this is the family line that has right to use of that nickname. And there's only one consul, the adopted member from Mucii Scaevolae, who was the consul of 131. And he also was elected as Pontifex Maximus. So this is something a family tradition already here that Licinii had the place of Pontifex Maximus, and that's a very important and influential position to have the highest religious authority of Rome. Biological father of this Council of 131 was the Council of 175, Publius Mucius Scaevola, and his mother was Licinia. Consul of 131 married with Claudia, who was sister of Consul of 143, Appius Claudius Pulcher, who is also a very interesting and influential person in the Republic. And for example, relative of this Appius Claudius Pulcher was elected as a consul for 130, so he followed in consulship this adopted Crassus. And Consul of 131 Crassus was supporter of Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus, and his daughter Licinia married the brother of Tiberius, that is Gaius Gracchus. And we might also remember that the Claudii Pulchri and Sempronii Gracchi had cooperation going on between them for a long time. So this is kind of branch of the Licinii Crassi that it's more oriented and influenced by the Claudii Pulchri and their relations. And I think that is also evidence of importance of Claudia in this marriage with the Consul of 131 Crassus. Consul of 131 Crassus died at war in Pergamum, and this is actually quite interesting bit of history as well, because as already mentioned before, with another member of Licinii Crassi, the Romans had religious rules that certain priests weren't allowed to exit the area of city of Rome. So they were tied into the city of Rome specifically. And the idea behind this taboo was that they were responsible for the general republic's part of the deal with the immortal gods. And therefore they were not allowed to leave the city, that was the heart of the republic, so that they would be always there to do their duty towards the gods, and also to make sure that the Romans would follow the contract that the people of Rome had with the gods. Religion and law were very much tied in the Roman minds. Military commands in Rome were given very often to consuls because they had the highest imperium, that is military power to command. And it was very often that when consul was elected, that he was given a province where there was a war going on, and he was responsible for conducting operations there. But what happened if a consul was also a priest who was not allowed to leave from the city? And what happened if both of the consuls of the years were such priests? And that is what happened in 131. Consuls were, of course, this Publius Licinius Crassus Dives Mucianus and Lucius Valerius Flaccus. Mucianus was recently selected as Pontifex Maximus, and Valerius Flaccus was Flamen Martialis, priest of Mars. And neither of them had a permission really religiously to leave Rome, but they were faced with dilemma that there was a war going on against Pergamum. There was a revolutionary king of Aristonicus, known as Eumenes III, against whom there would have to be conducted operations. So how they solved this problem? This war was evidently to be an easy one for Rome, because it was a rich kingdom, rich area, and Roman military was very much overpowering compared to the opposition. So by all intents it would be an easy campaign, and it would be followed by a triumph. So actually both of the consuls wanted to have that command for themselves. Easy opportunity to grab some glory. So what happened was that Pontifex Maximus forbid his consular colleague as Flamen priest to go outside the city of Rome, because Pontifex Maximus had religious authority over the Flamen Martialis. So it was his privilege to take upon the leading of the war for and military command for himself, even though his priestly position still, strictly speaking, forbid that. But as Pontifex Maximus, he made this ruling that for him it was allowed. And the logic of his was that people of Rome expressly wanted to appoint Pontifex Maximus as consul, so it would override the religious rule for him to stay in Rome, because the people of Rome in this way granted him the permission to go and command a military campaign. And this is what he did. And Mucianus actually even was voted by the people to lead the troops. And legally speaking, this is valid, and but I don't know if we can really consider this to be a great show of character by either of those consuls, really. War started quite well for the Mucianus, but during the second year he and his troops were ambushed, and after a battle Mucianus was to be captured, and he concealed his true identity and unfortunately was killed while attempting to being arrested and taken as a prisoner. So Mucianus had won the command for himself, but eventually he didn't win the war. And war itself turned out to be Roman victory as expected, but Mucianus evidently perhaps wasn't so skillful military commander as was needed really there. Okay, that was the three main branches of the family and some of the connections. And as said, this is one of the best known Republican noble families for marriage connections. It's really very telling, and if you would want to start learning more about marriages of the Romans, I think this is a great family to start with, because you can actually track these marriage connections through generations. Deep connections are with Mucii, Scaevolae, Caecili, Metelli, Pompeii, Calpurni, Pisones, and they are also connected with Cornelis Scipiones, Marii, Claudii Pulchri, and Sempronii Crassi. So there is so much to choose from if you want to study these connections more deeply. And next we will take a look at the case of Licinia, who wasn't allowed to mourn for her husband. And here we can see the simplified version of the family tree of this Licinii Crassi. You can observe her here at the bottom row, married with Gaius Sempronius Gracchus. And if you consider these connections here, you can see in this chart there are Sempronii Gracchi, Cornelis Scipiones, Claudii Pulchri, Mucii, Scaevolae, Licinii Crassi, Emily Paulii even. Then this is kind of the who's who of the Roman Republic of this era. These are really the most prestigious and important individuals and families of the time. So if we look at this marriage with Sempronius Gracchus from the point of view of Licinia herself, this marriage is a very interesting one, and very much deep into the center of power and politics in Rome. So I imagine that this Licinia would have been very well versed and understanding of the general political situation, and she would have to be in order to survive in this kind of environment. This is a continuation of Consul 131 in that sense that we already mentioned this Licinia marrying Gaius Gracchus. Her mother was Claudia, and who was also an aunt of Claudia, actually, who married Tiberius Gracchus, brother of her husband. So if you take a look at this marriage connection here, the Claudian Semproni were close alliance in politics, and it also had a bearing for the life of Licinia as well. And marriage with Gaius Gracchus brought Licinii closer also to Cornelis Scipiones, because the mother of the Gracchi brothers was Cornelia, that was daughter of Scipio Africanus. And as you might remember, the other branch of the Licinii Crassi also had its own connections, the other branch of Cornelis Scipiones. So this is kind of recurring aim of the Licinii Crassi to align with Cornelis Scipiones, evidently. And of course the Mucii Scaevolae are very much present here in the family line, as already I have highlighted before. And this position of Licinia was really the crossing of the several of the most influential families of Rome. Even while the father of the Gracchi brothers had been one of the most influential senators of his days and part of the senatorial politics, his sons wanted to do something different. And both of the Gracchi brothers started their political campaigns for reforming Rome. And they could have chosen very different kind of career, traditional career as well, if they had wanted. But this was also a time of change in the history of Rome in many ways, because after the Punic Wars, Rome was really the sole leading power in the Mediterranean world. And this changed so much in Rome and in the balance of powers generally in the Mediterranean, because Rome had its first provinces outside Italy, and also expanded the commercial and political influence over the much wider area than it had used to be in the Italian peninsula. And perhaps it was this time of change because also the riches started pouring in Rome, obviously because it was the center of power, it was also the center of economy as well. And I think this is the kind of the background for the Gracchi brothers and their times. Elder of the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius, had tried to advance a land reform, and this land reform actually was quite like the reform that Gaius Laelius Sapiens had advocated some 10 years earlier. So they certainly weren't the first ones to expound these ideas. But what happened was that Laelius had eventually discarded his idea of reform and earned nickname Sapiens, the wise, because of this from the Senate. But Tiberius Gracchus was more determined. He didn't want to give up. And there was a lot of political tensions because of this, and they broke into violence at 133. And Tiberius Gracchus was killed by a crowd that was led by some angry senators, and that's in itself a very interesting story as well. But let's not go in there. But let's see more about the position of family of Licinia, coming wife of the Gaius Gracchus in this all, because the uncle of Licinia was consul during these events and Mucius Scaevola, and he tried to calm things down but failed. He was unable to prevent, for example, the lynching of Tiberius Gracchus, and he actually had, this Mucius Scaevola had done even work to try to accommodate and to formulate the proposal of Tiberius Gracchus in a way that would have been acceptable also for the nobility of Rome. But all that was in vain when the violence broke out. So the family of Licinia had already tradition of being kind of moderates here and compromisers. And 10 years after this killing of Tiberius Gracchus, his younger brother Gaius Gracchus was active in politics and actually driving pretty much the same political agenda as Tiberius Gracchus had done as Tribunus Plebis. And unsurprisingly, again, the tensions were high, and there was some unfortunate events during which the supporter of the consul Opimius was killed. And this really gave the enemies of the Gaius Gracchus the excuse they needed to have a Senatus Consultum ultimatum issued. And this was the kind of Senate mandate for the consuls to protect the safety of the state. And this emergency decree overrode the usual laws and procedures, giving the consuls kind of unquestioned and unparalleled powers. And it has been often said that this use of Senatus Consultum ultimatums was one of the reasons why the Republic ultimately failed, because it created this very dangerous precedent of these kind of extraordinary powers that override laws and procedures otherwise. In any case, Opimius gave order to gather an armed gang for the next morning, and supporters of Gaius Gracchus followed and started to gather their own troops. And it has to be noted that Gaius Gracchus himself was against using violence, and he even refused to wear an armor, but and he wanted to solve things peacefully, but the matters were out of his control at this moment already. And at home, night before this showdown between Opimius and supporters of Gracchus, Licinia begged her husband not to go to the public meeting next morning, and because she was worried that he might be killed and that there would be violence erupting. And I think it's pretty evident that Licinia was well aware about the plans of the opposition to kill Gracchus there. I think it's unthinkable that she would have been so naive to expect that nothing would happen there. This kind of without this kind of knowledge and understanding of the current political situation, that she would only be generally worried without any specific reason. I think she knew perfectly well the danger and understood the situation and knew about the plot to kill Gaius Gracchus, because Opimius had made sure that the Gracchus would be killed, and he, for example, had offered to pay in gold the weight of the head of the Gaius Gracchus, whoever would bring that head to him. And this kind of price on the head, very literally, it wouldn't have remained as a secret. Of course, supporters of Gracchus had their spies amongst the staff of Opimius, and of course Licinia and Gaius Gracchus knew very well about this order. But Gaius Gracchus decided to disregard all these warnings and went to the forum in the morning. And Licinia instead fled into the house of her brother for safety, in case that there would be violence spreading to their home as well, which was kind of expected to happen. In the forum, the situation developed quite quickly. There was some insincere offerings to avoid bloodshed and discussions, but eventually Opimius ordered his troops to attack. And the head of Gaius Gracchus was brought to him, and he paid gold for it. And it turned out that this head was unexceptionally heavy. And when examined, they noticed that the brains of the Gaius Gracchus had been carved out from the skull, and the lead had been put there in the space of the brains, so that it would be heavier and would earn more gold to the person who would bring it to the Opimius. So it was very very well thought out and a deal that worked and got Gaius Gracchus killed and served its purpose well. And the bodies of the Gracchus and about 3,000 of his supporters were thrown into Tiber, and their wealth and family fortunes were confiscated. And what was added more here was that the wives of those who had deceased, they were forbidden to mourn for their husbands, which is quite cruel punishment, I think. In the marriage agreement between Licinia and Gaius Gracchus, the dowry of Licinia was stated to be of her property, so she owned it, not him. And this meant that it should not be possible to be confiscated, this dowry, along with the possessions of Gracchus. But this didn't stop the crowd doing so. And where all this money went was, at least partially, part of it went for Opimius to build a temple of Concordia with this confiscated money. And this was an act that was so distasteful that even the contemporaries protested against it. It simply is tasteless to build a temple for Concordia after you have died, after you have killed your political opponents. Opimius himself was later on exiled because he was one of the senators that was bribed by Jugurtha in the midst of the Jugurthine War. Relative of Licinia, that was Publius Mucius Scaevola Pontifex, later on defended the right of Licinia to have her dowry returned to her, and this was done. So eventually she got her money back and dowry back, but it needed intervention from his influential relative. And in any case, she was never allowed to mourn for her husband. And now if we take the position of Licinia here and look things through her perspective, we can speculate that Licinia might have shared the political views of her husband. It wouldn't be anyhow alien to a daughter of families from Mucii, Scaevolae and Licinii Crassi background. And it would also make it quite understandable why her dowry was also confiscated originally and not returned to her immediately, because that would be a way to punish her as well and her relatives as well with their alliance with Gracchi. What we know about her behavior and opinions and marriage, I think we can say that it seems to point out that the marriage had been a happy one. I think if there would have been a great tension between her and Gaius Gracchus, she wouldn't have begged him not to go to the meeting. So I think there was a genuine caring between them. And of course we cannot know exactly how Licinia herself viewed and experienced all these things that happened in her life, which was quite, I think, eventful life overall. But I think we can be fairly certain that she had a realistic understanding of this situation, and she knew what was coming up when Gracchus went into the forum in that morning. And even though she probably had this realistic understanding, I think she genuinely suffered of this tragedy of losing her husband in this way and having all these legal battles even after that killing. So I think this is a very interesting kind of glimpse also into the private lives of the Romans and family lives inside the nuclear family of Romans, how relations and family backgrounds affected the marriages. And for the last part, I will take a bit different look into the lives of the women of this family, and we will take this case of two Laelia and two Mucia and two Licinia under observation. And Here is a simplified family tree that is highlighting those 3 generations of pairs of sisters, which is also, I think, a quite funny coincidence that there happens to be 2 of daughters at each of these generations. And what is interesting here, I think, is that even though this kind of patrilinear view of families and viewing of family trees is very much it had this very good place in the Roman history and in our tools for looking at the lives of the Romans. There are also other alternatives as well. And for example, now we are taking a kind of matrilinear point of view here, or methodology, and look 3 generations of mothers and daughters. And I think we will find this also instructive and kind of explaining things that are not obviously easy to spot out from the traditional family trees that are built around the male succession lines. And here at the beginning of this line of generations, there are 2 daughters of the consul of 140, that is the Gaius Laelius Sapiens. And this Laelius Sapiens was a friend of Scipio Aemilianus. And this was also a son of Laelius, who had been a very close friend of Scipio Africanus. So we can see that the families of Laeli and Scipio, Cornelis Scipiones, were closely aligned, and they were pretty much the Scipiones were the protectors of the Laeli, who were plebeian gens. And these daughters of consul of Laelius, they married well. First, Laelia married with Gaius Fannius, and who was also from the consular level family, and also 2nd generation of consuls himself. And that was very much on par with the position, family position and background of the Laeli. The other daughter married with consul of 117, that is Quintus Mucius Scaevola Augur. And this was clearly a step up from the usual level of Laeli. So the second daughter got a chance of this kind of social climbing through marriage. And this Laelia and Scaevola, they had 1 son and 2 daughters. The son of them, Scaevola, he didn't pursue political career for some reason, but the elder daughter Mucia married with Manius Acilius Glabrio, whose father and grandfather had been consuls. And also the son of Glabrio and Mucia became consul eventually. So it was very much improvement for Mucia compared to her mother Laelia and her family connections. The younger daughter of Laelia and Scaevola married with Lucius Licinius Crassus Orator. So this is the Mucia wife of Crassus Orator. And this actually was quite a remarkable social climb for the daughter of Laelia. And we can only guess what Laelia, the mother, felt like having both of her daughters marrying into higher social position than what he has herself having by birth. So it was a clear improvement of level of marriages in the generation of her children. And what I think is widely known and accepted is that women of the family were deeply involved in the marriage arrangement and planning of unions. And this, as I have shown here already, makes it logical to investigate the mother-daughter lines of the families as well. And this becomes even more evident when we look at the daughters of Mucia and Licinius Crassus. They had an adopted son and 2 biological daughters. Younger of the daughters, Licinia, married Gaius Marius, who was the son of the 7 times consul Gaius Marius the Elder. And of course, that 7 times consulship of Marius was extraordinary achievement in the history of Rome. The elder Licinia married with the consul of 111, as we have mentioned before, Publius Cornelius Scipio Nasica Serapio. But what's interesting is that this Nasica Serapio was the 7th consul of his family line, which was also at that moment an unparalleled achievement. So he had 7 consular generations in his family line before him. And added to those 7 consulships of the family line, there was also 3 censores and 4 triumphatores and even 1 princeps senatus. And there wasn't any more prestigious family in the Republic at this time. And Scipiones were very selective in their choices for marriages, because marriages was one of the main means of Scipiones to keep up their position in the society. So the chance of Licinia getting to marry this Nasica Serapio, that was really good, extraordinary chance. And if we now think this grandmother Laelia, if she still was alive at this moment, to see this kind of leap from Laelia into Scipiones within a couple of generations. Her granddaughter was among the highest princesses of the Republic, so to speak, and she was herself, the grandmother Laelia, really only from the quite modest or typical Roman family. And so she must have been very satisfied. And of course there is a place for coincidences, but when we examine these 3 generations of mothers and daughters, that was all at every step rising higher. I think we have to accept that this was planned. This was result of family planning and careful family planning as well. And where that would get us, I think it's was the intention already at the grandmother Laelia that her daughter and granddaughter would climb higher into society. And I think we can even ask a question that maybe this was the kind of grand planning of this grandmother Laelia, that she was responsible for formulating this kind of plan of advancement in society for her daughters. And why this would make sense is that the families of Laelius, Mucius and Licinius, these were all known for their education for the daughters of the family as well. There are a lot of historical evidence to support this idea that also the daughters of these families were given a high quality education. And also the fathers and brothers of these women were also known for their academic merits, as lawyers, for example, or speakers and writers and so on. And I think we could describe that this was also intellectual elite of the Republic in its own part. And it's not, considering this, it's not a big stretch of imagination to think that the social climb was a result of careful planning by intellectual mother-daughter pairs. And I think this is one of the most obvious cases where we can see the handwriting of the elder generation of women making family planning and thinking matrilineal really, and not just the lines of the fathers and husbands. And we can also ask the question that to what extent this kind of matrilineal line can influence the political decisions of the men of these families. Obviously, these families were aligned already quite strictly, and there was a lot of cooperation between these families in any case. But I think that is a good question to consider. And also, maybe we can summarize this by saying or acknowledging that it was not only their husbands and fathers that were on top of society, but also the women of these families were there on the top there as well. And this is also, I think, because of the fact that these marriages opened the possibility for the men of the families to form these ties. In Roman concept, the marriage was between a man and a woman. So if you wanted to align by marriage to another family, then by definition, the daughter of the family was as important and needed as was the son of the family. And I think this is one of the ways we can conceptualize and try to put the importance and position of the daughters of the family into some kind of context and understand how they themselves probably viewed their own importance and influence in the society. Okay, this was the family of the Licinii Crassi and some examples of those generations of cooperation with other families and connections as well. And overall, I think when we consider the whole family of all these family lines of Licinii Crassi, it was a low cohesion family. There are many different branches and many different strategies, and each of these branches was actually also different from others and worked quite independently, arranging their connections with other families. Marriages, political careers, judicial careers, wealth, religious offices, these are very much the means that the Licinii Crassi used to keep their position and power in the society, but they are not known really as military commanders that much. There are other families that are much more profiled to the military commanders. Can we say that the marriages had the central role in the Licinii Crassi family strategy? In some ways, this is justified thing to say and sentiment, but there is a caveat here, and that is because this is one of the best known families and number of connections with other families. It makes the other families look more isolated than they really were, and perhaps what we see here in the Licinii Crassi is actually the norm and not the exception from the rule in the marriages. And I think it's interesting that family culture would allow this amount of individuality and compared to, for example, patrician families like Cornelis Scipiones or plebeian houses like Caecili Metelli and Mucii Scaevolae. And I think as overall we could call Licinii Crassi as one of the most tolerant and diverse families of the Republican era nobility. And for me personally, I always have this kind of image of more laid back and relaxed family than many other families were. This might be just my imagination, but I think that there are some indications for this. That was everything I had prepared about this family. There are lots of stories that could be told as well, and this is a very interesting family in general to start with if you want to dig deeper into Roman Republican families, and it's easy family to understand and find information about. I say thank you, and I hope that we will see with another video later on.